Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the new normal. I'm here as always, your host Jeremy, here trying to make the world seem a little more normal. Does it ever happen? Come on, we ain't fooling ourselves at this point. It doesn't fucking happen. But we try. We freaking try. And to join me tonight in trying this epic quest is my guest, Mark Leslie, podcaster and haunted location explorer, which is the part we're really digging into tonight. But how's it going, Mark?
Oh, great, Jeremy. Great to be here.
Glad to have you, buddy. Well, the first question I ask everybody on the show is, what got you into the paranormal world?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I was always afraid of the dark. Always afraid of the monster under my bed, the boogeyman in the closet, all the whole 9 yards. And I never outgrew that. So I was always fascinated by the unknown and the dark and looking in, what's going on that we don't understand, maybe just happening just outside of where we can understand or what we can see, what we can perceive. And I guess that never left me. So I do write a lot of fiction. So I have mostly lots of short horror or Twilight Zone style tales, because I always ask the question, what if? Speculative fiction is like that. And yeah, and then later, little did I know, I grew up reading books about Bigfoot and UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that. I didn't realize, I always knew I would write fiction, but I never knew I would actually write books that explored haunted places, that outline and detail some of the research of haunted places. So it's just always been in my blood, I guess.
So, no paranormal experiences when you were younger or anything?
Well, I mean, I was afraid of everything. So yeah, anytime the lights went off, I thought there was some monster in the dark. But no, actually, no, I didn't have any weird experience where I saw a ghost or anything like that. There was one time when I think it was about 9 years old, that the bright lights in the sky, but it was actually like a meteor or something that was coming down, and that was like really, really cool. But nothing nothing paranormal or strange like that ever happened to me. I tried. I went out looking for Bigfoot all the time because we lived in the wilderness in mid-northern Ontario, Canada, and I was just hoping maybe to see him one day, but no, I didn't have any luck.
Where did you grow up that you thought you would see Bigfoot? I'm kind of curious about that.
No, I know it's not nowhere near the Rocky Mountains. So Ontario, Canada, which is
Well,
north of New
uh,
York.
okay. Well, I'm from New York originally. I'm from Kingston, New York.
Okay. Yeah. So
But
yeah, Ontario, the province of Ontario in Canada, north of, like, in that same time zone, just north of there. But I mean, my imagination was always so powerful. I knew Bigfoot was seen in the Rocky Mountains. I didn't live anywhere near the Rocky Mountains, but there were wilderness, and I figured wilderness is connected. I mean, if there's one out there, maybe there's some of them have migrated and moved and moved moved to a different, maybe less rocky region so they could get around better. I don't know.
I mean, well, Bigfoot is everywhere in North America, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's not a hard belief that you would think you'd find Bigfoot. It really isn't, because Bigfoot is fucking everywhere. Like, there's not anywhere in there's not anywhere in the world that there's not some kind of form of Bigfoot or
Yeah.
likewise.
Yeah, some sort of
But
cryptid, similar creature that may have a different name, or something like that. But yeah, I have seen some of the stories. I did, even when I was researching the book Spooky Sudbury, I actually had a chapter on cryptid creatures from the region, and there were a couple stories between Perry Sound and Sudbury, which I mean, only people who live near the area would understand where that is. But yeah, some interesting tales of unexplainable footprints in the snow and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, Bigfoot is everywhere, so that's not hard to believe. I mean,
Yeah.
if you, I mean, I wish when I was a kid I knew enough to go out and actually look for Bigfoot. Because do I think I would have found him? I mean, I grew up in the Catskills, so I maybe
Oh,
could have
Bigfoot was
found.
gotta be in the Catskills?
I mean, I
Yeah.
would imagine, but I've never to this. I mean, I live in Massachusetts now, and I thought I found a footprint, maybe in Leominster State Forest. But other than
Okay.
that, like, I never seen anything that actually led me
No.
down
Did you
proof of.
get like a picture or try to take a cast of it or anything like that?
No, I took a picture, but I ended up deleting it because it was too iffy to me, and I didn't want to post
Right.
it to the groups I'm in and be like, I think I found a footprint. Like I didn't want to be like, that's just the way I am.
Yeah, yeah.
But you've had you never had any experiences that you know of in the paranormal, at least.
Not in my younger years. No, I was just always fascinated by it, and I knew I wanted to write stories, and so I thought my stories would always be ghost stories and paranormal tales and stuff like that. I didn't really have an encounter until just a few years ago, actually. So
All right. Well, let me ask you this: what what led you? Well, I mean, you had an interest in the paranormal, at least then.
yeah.
But what made you want to write stories about haunted locations?
So initially, it was interesting. Again, I was writing ghost stories. I was in my early 20s, and I went to. I lived in Ottawa, the nation's capital, and Canada's capital, which again is north of New York City, geographically somewhat north of New York. And I went on a ghost walk with a haunted walk group of Ottawa, and they do a really great tour of the downtown area, the Rideau Canal, the Parliament buildings, like just a whole bunch of the stuff that's in downtown. And they did this really interesting and fascinating historical look at our country, but also at ghosts. And oftentimes you can't tell a good ghost story without digging into some of the history. So it was the first time ever in my life I actually enjoyed history. I always hated it. It was a subject I barely passed in high school. I was never interested in on this date. This happened. This happened. This happened. Whatever. But when told in a ghostly context, suddenly I went, "Wow, what a fascinating country we live in." There's all kinds of. So, for example, our prime minister used to commune. One of our prime ministers used to commune with the dead. Was a contemporary of folks like Harry Houdini, etc., and did a lot of paranormal stuff. Used to have conversations with his dead mother, and so there's a lot of really fascinating stories in Canada. And so when I finished the Ghost Walk, I kind of tucked it in the back of my mind, and I thought that was really fascinating. And then of course I would apply some of the tales to the fiction I wrote. But then when I moved to Hamilton, Ontario, which is a lot closer to Toronto, which is Canada's largest city, I went on ghost walks, the Hamilton ghost walks, and that was around the time that again I was new to Hamilton, so it was a great way for me to learn about the city, and I love going to on ghost walks when I go into new cities. And I talked to the ghost walk groups and I said, you guys have some really great stories. And I worked in the book industry as a bookseller. I said, you should put a book together. And they said, nah, we're too busy. We don't have time to write a book, but we'll give you access to our research and files if you want to do one. And so I pitched the book Haunted Hamilton. That was the first paranormal book that I put out, 2010, I think, and it was just a wonderful exploration of the city of Hamilton, Ontario, which is not too far from Niagara Falls. So there's a lot of stories related to the War of 1812 and the conflict in Canada and the U.S. back then, etc. So there was a lot of ghostly soldiers seen on some of the battlefields and stuff like that. And that was it. I suddenly got hooked. I had so much fun working on that book and doing the research. Even some of the challenges of doing the research is when you reach out to one of the locations, Dundurn Castle, they didn't want to talk about anything related to ghosts, that's always a challenge. So you getting the research is a little bit more challenging there. And Haunted Hamilton was the first book I put out. I wasn't sure I was going to keep writing them, but I was being interviewed by my reporter from my hometown, where I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, which is north of Toronto. And the reporter had asked the question during the interview, would you ever consider writing a collection of ghost stories about our hometown, about Sudbury, Ontario, the nickel capital of the world, so the mining community up in northern Ontario? And that's when I said, "Huh, I'd never thought of that." And she said, "Well, I've written about some haunted places in my job as a journalist. If you're ever interested, I'd love to co-author it with you." And so, um, I thought, "What the heck?" We got together for coffee, and then the next book was Spooky Sudbury. Jenny Jellin and I co-authored that book, and that began the series of writing about places I had lived initially, or had lived, or was very familiar with, or grew up in. Or some of the themes are, one of the books is Tomes of Terror, haunted bookstores and libraries, which is here. So it's just a whole bunch of bookstores and libraries throughout Canada, the U.S., and other parts of the world. And then I did haunted hospitals, again, hospitals all over the world, mostly in Canada and the U.S. And I co-authored that one with Rhonda Parrish. So yeah, I ended up doing 6 books so far, just exploring that. And I guess I got hooked, because now no matter where I go, anytime I hear someone mention some sort of ghost story, I'm often willing to like reach out, pull out a notepad, and say, "Hey, do you mind if I write this down? Because it might go into a book someday."
Which is funny because, well, one, Sudbury's a town in Massachusetts as well. So that's why it's funny to me. It's because Sudbury's a town in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And
Sudbury, yeah, is a town in Massachusetts, but yeah,
and I'm sure it has a lot of its own hauntings as well because it's I believe it's based back to the Revolutionary War, if I'm not mistaken. I could be
yeah,
wrong on
probably,
that. I mean, it's right by Concord, which was a huge battle in the Revolutionary War. So
yeah.
I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And it's funny because you're not the first author out on who wrote haunted stories.
Mm,
Eleanor Wagner,
mm.
who has wrote Sussex County hauntings and a few other books about New Jersey hauntings, and she just moved to North Carolina. She's gonna start writing books about North Carolina hauntings.
Oh, cool. That's what. Yeah, she's probably, she's in the area. She's enjoying it. She's collecting the stories. I mean, yeah,
She's from New Jersey originally, and she collected stories from hauntings in New Jersey for 4 different books,
yeah,
and if I'm not mistaken. And she has been in this show twice. She's a huge. I love her. She's a great woman, and she's done a lot of great things for the paranormal community with like her books,
yeah.
including some stories about the Jersey Devil, which
Oh, yeah, yeah.
if you can get some stories about the Jersey Devil and experiences there, that's a whole nother fucking thing.
Well, I did remember one of the horror stories I wrote was inspired by the Jersey Devil, but I didn't. I've never written about the Jersey Devil in any of those books. But it's really, I imagine she
Wow.
has the fun of just doing the research of the area. I'm working right now on Weird Waterloo, so I live in Waterloo, Ontario, which is about an hour and a half west of Toronto, and it's got some interesting tales. So I'm just working, but it's hard. There are some stories that come easy, where you do the research, and there's multiple eyewitnesses or multiple accounts over time. So I love to cross reference and not just go with a single incident. I want to have multiple incidents and get different perspectives, and try to pull it all together, because I'm a believer, but when I write the stories, I'll always take a bit of a skeptic's viewpoint. So for
You have to.
example, when I was writing Tomes of Terror, when I was doing like the haunted bookstores, well, if somebody said, "Well, and the books just fell off the shelves on their own," I would kind of say, "Well, but that's physics. That's basic physics. Gravity happens. That's not really unexplainable. That's easily explainable, especially where we live, and potentially where you are now, or where you grew up. In the summertime, it gets really, really humid, and paper absorbs water. So when the books are on a shelf, and they start to expand because they get more humidity inside of them, they're going to fall over. So I wouldn't take that as a sign that the place was haunted. But if something strange happened, like the books are all on the shelf evenly spined, and then somebody walks by, and 2 seconds later they turn around and the books are like stacked neatly in the middle of the floor, and there's nobody there to have done it, That's something that's unexplainable, and that's a little bit different, or some other sort of phenomena that's not easily explained.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even as a paranormal podcaster, I have to play a skeptic at times as well because I have to
Yeah,
be like, I mean, people see a bright light in their bedroom, for example,
yeah,
and they want to say it's a UFO. I'm like, okay, well, could have been a street light, could have been a cop car with a spotlight. Like you
yeah,
have to play the skeptic at certain parts and be like,
yeah,
because not everything in this world is paranormal. As much as
yeah,
I wish that was true,
yeah,
not
yeah,
everything, not everything in this world is going to be paranormal, and that's the bottom line. I mean,
yeah,
you have to play the skeptic because if you don't,
yeah.
then you can be one of those. I don't want to say idiots because that's the wrong word, but if you could be one of those fools who believes that everything in the world is paranormal.
Yeah,
And
and I think the readers will take you more seriously if you're willing to approach it with an open mind, right? You're willing to approach it and say,
exactly.
"This is what it could be, but we can't explain that." Maybe I can give you an example from one of the stories I put into Haunted Hamilton.
Oh, please
So
do.
there was a house known as Murder Mansion, and it's a popular topic that the Ghost Walk group talks about. And there's a beautiful stately mansion just on the Niagara Escarpment runs through Hamilton, and you can look down. They call it the mountain, which is anyone out west would laugh to call that a mountain. But yeah, you're looking down onto the city. This beautiful stately mansion, and there was a gorgeous, beautiful 100-year-old house there that a lot of the kids, it was all boarded up. It was closed down. They would walk on the far side of the street because they would claim to have seized things in the windows and stuff like that. The legend from the house was that there was a family living there. It was a man and a woman and their child. And in the middle of the night, for some reason, no unexplainable, the man goes into the shed, grabs the hatchet, and runs around the house and butchered the family. And then the stories that followed were that the next family that moved in there, the teenage son, found the same axe in the shed, and in the middle of the night went. Oh, and then he went and hung the man after he killed his family. He hung himself up on the widow's walk of the house, overlooking the city. And the next family that moved in there, the 17-year-old teenage son, did the same thing. Found the axe, ran around, killed everyone, etc. So the legends are that sometimes when you walk by the house you'd see these images of this like screaming woman running by the window as if she's being chased by an axe and stuff like that. So all kinds of stories like that. So when I write the story, I decide to do a little bit of research. I'm like, okay, let's look into murders in Hamilton, or like back in the roughly the 50-60 year time period when roughly this is set, because they're all very vague stories. And I can't find anything. I can't find any reports of any sort of mass murders, whatever. And then looking into the thought. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but if there was a murder weapon that would be used like an axe, potentially in a murder in some sort of family, that would probably be in some sort of storage with the police somewhere. It wouldn't be left at the house. So that was a little bit skeptical. But I did I contacted the local police to see if there were any murders in this neighborhood, in this location, because maybe it was a different house if it wasn't that house, because sometimes stories get confused. And so when I wrote the chapter, the stories were so fun and so interesting and so pervasive, like a lot of people had heard them over time in Hamilton. I needed to include it. But as I concluded the chapter, I said, but here's the research I did. And I spent a couple pages explaining the research and saying, looks like this was just an urban legend. And I suspect it was based on, because the story started to come out around the same time the movie Stanley Kubrick's The Shining came out. And I've always been
Yep.
fascinated with how sometimes the things that we see are related to pop culture things that are popular, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When that movie came out, there was a lot of different uh, visions similar to what you saw in the movie. So, anyways, my editor reminded me that I went a little bit too far in my skepticism, and so my editor pulled it back, and I cut that 2 pages of exposition down to just about a paragraph, and then I still ended the story as like, well, while the evidence doesn't seem to support many of the stories, there's still a lot of people still claim to see a lot of things at this house, and I still get a really eerie feeling when I walk by, because when I walk by, I always cross the street. And so I kind of ended it on that sort of, yeah, maybe it's explained, but I'm not taking any chances. So again, I tried to keep a bit of that open mind.
You have to. You have to keep an open mind to everything in the paranormal because it may not be paranormal. I mean, if literally if you feel like you need to cross the street when you get to this house, then obviously there is some kind of entity there that makes you feel that way. That's the
Yeah.
way I feel, at least. I mean, whether, I mean, you said it bears resemblances to The Shining and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. How so? Because that's two completely
Oh,
different
no, no, no,
phenomena.
no. I was Close Encounters was when I was researching UFO stuff for Spooky Sudbury. But
Oh,
like when I think of The Shining, you think of Jack Nicholson's character, you know,
driven crazy, yeah.
and he's got the axe and he's chasing them around. And it was kind of like, yeah, the story started to come out around that time, and it was kind of funny because when I was doing research for Spooky Sudbury, I had 4 or 5 chapters on UFOs. I wasn't expecting. So, Sudbury being the nickel capital of the world, right? Rich nickel ore deposits in the ground. There's a belief potentially that that could attract aliens, right? They may be attracted to the
I
natural minerals, right?
I live in Worcester County, Massachusetts, and in Worcester County there's a huge deposits of radon everywhere, and it is believed that extraterrestrials come to this area in UFOs to siphon that radon for fuel for their ships.
There you go. Right? Yeah. So there could be a reason why they're. I mean, these these minerals are used by us for important things, right? For manufacturing and creation of steel and all kinds of other products. So the aliens are probably cognizant of these natural resources as well. So, but I ended up having a whole bunch of chapters. But as I was looking through the newspaper, because a lot of these were in the newspaper, I was looking at newspaper articles related to UFO stories. I found a correlation between some of the stories and some of what was going on in popular culture. And that's why, when Close Encounters came out, suddenly there was a resurgence when you looked at the timeline of UFO reports in the newspaper. That movie came out, and then suddenly everyone sees UFO, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, pop culture does lend to people believing things more than they ever would.
Yeah.
Because if you watch a movie about aliens or alien abductions or anything along those lines, then you're gonna all of a sudden any little thing that seems like it could be, you're gonna point towards UFOs.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
if you see a plane flying through the sky, you'll say, "Oh, it's a UFO."
Well, I don't
Like
know what it
people
is.
are
Yeah.
humans are gullible, to say the least.
Yeah.
Humans are gullible, and they will, if they have something in their head, that just leads to them believing something more. I
Yeah.
don't want to say humans are idiots, because as true as that statement may be, that's not something I want to put in my podcast.
Yeah.
But I mean, humans are gullible. They will fall for basically anything.
Well,
Oh,
we're
there's
susceptible to
there's
persuasion, right? In certain ways, like if I mention, I don't know, Volkswagen Beetle to you, and we're driving in the car together, suddenly you're going to notice Volkswagen Beetles on the highway. I mean, they're pretty noticeable anyways. But if I point out a certain model of car that you really never paid attention to, suddenly you're going to start seeing them a little bit more. And it doesn't mean that you're manufacturing them in your mind. It means that you're now paying attention to them. So it's just interesting that just that little power of suggestion, what it can do to us, right? We can see things we didn't see before that were always there, or sometimes we see things we want to see.
I mean, it's funny. The human mind. I mean, it's. I kind of relate to like COVID because like all of a sudden there's this mystery disease that everybody, and then all of a sudden you see someone not wearing gloves, you see someone not wearing a mask, and it's hysteria. Like it's fucking the end of the world because someone's not wearing a mask. Like human beings are very, very gullible to everything in this earth. They really are. And it's sad to a degree. It really is. Because I mean, the riots during COVID for toilet paper, for paper towels, for anything like that,
Yeah.
just are examples of how gullible we are as humans. But you bring another element, an unknown element into it, like extraterrestrials or Bigfoot or I don't even want to know what third one I want to throw out there, but you bring any of these, or the Illuminati, throw any of these, or Epstein Island, throw any of these elements into it, and all of a sudden everybody's a pedophile. Everything you see in the sky is an alien. Everything you see is a ghost. Like it's just, I don't. I mean, I live in a possessed house. I don't like to say haunted because I'm not haunted. I don't have poltergeists, so they're not doing anything to me on a daily basis. I live in a possessed house. There are
Okay.
spirits here. I'm well aware of it. They leave me alone. They watch. That's all they do. They may not even be full blown spirits. They may just be remnants of the people who lived here previously that are just kind of hanging around.
Yeah.
But they may not be full blown spirits even. But still, you throw any of these to a normal person who is not into the paranormal at all, or is just a regular human being, and they instantly will believe everything they see or do, or everything they hear is this thing. Like that's just humans are gullible. That's the best way to put it. Humans are gullible, and
Yeah, but there's also factors that affect that. Have you heard of the God helmet?
I can't say I have. I'm kind of intrigued.
Well, again, research I did about Sudbury, Ontario, and so there's a university there, Laurentian University, and Dr. Persinger, he's a instructor, a professor at the university, is also a researcher. He did these experiments with what he called the God helmet. So, are you familiar with snow machine helmet? That kind of the big helmet that you would wear to drive on a snow machine, or it's kind of like a motorcycle helmet, very similar.
You mean like a snowmobile?
Yeah, snowmobile, but the helmet you would put on when you drive a snowmobile.
Ah,
It's
I
like a
mean,
motorcycle helmet. Think about it like that, but it's got a very
I
distinctive shape,
I
right?
mean, most people I know who ride snowmobiles around here don't wear helmets, but go ahead.
There were laws in Ontario that required us to. But
Uh,
anyway, so he took a snow machine helmet and he basically fitted it with different electrodes, and in the lab he would put people in semi isolated, um, not quite an isolation tank, but a room that was uh, soundproofed, darkened, and so you couldn't hear any a noise from outside. You couldn't see anything; it was completely pitch black. Would put the helmet on; they would be laying down comfortably, and then he would stimulate different parts of their brain with the God helmet. They call it, and the reason they call it the God helmet is uh, people had visions when he stimulated certain parts of their brain. And one of the interesting factors is, depending upon the person's predisposition, they would they would always feel that there was a presence in the room with them. Now, if they were very religious, the presence was an angel. If they were prone to believing in extraterrestrials and abduction and stuff like that, it was aliens that were in the room with them. Sometimes they would see demons in the room with them. So it was
so
really fascinating that different people would see or experience a different entity in the room with them based on the electrode. So one
this
of
seems like this seems like it would just play on whatever is prevalent in your mind.
Yeah, but what this strikes me as is it reminded me, I'm sure you've heard of the tales of the hag that are very popular on the East Coast, right? You've heard of those, right?
I honestly haven't, and
Oh,
I'm
no.
even
So
more intrigued. It's rare I don't hear things.
a
So,
lot I've heard a lot from Eastern Canadian, like Newfoundland and Halifax
oh,
and
okay. See, this is the thing. It's two different countries.
well, I
That's
know,
the
but
thing.
we so close, right? There's some of the legends are pervasive across the border.
Obviously not, but
But some of the legends that happen in East is when people are sleeping on their back, they wake up with this really intense feeling of pressure on their chest, and it's the old hag is pushing on your chest and trying to steal
oh,
your breath. That's the
that's
those are the legends.
in America. Yes, that's a thing in America, but
Yeah, but maybe you don't call it the old hag.
it's more relevant to like sleep paralysis demon.
Yeah, sleep paralysis demon. But so what I've always been fascinated in sleep, uh, basically dreams and sleep and stuff. And what happens with the electrics in our brains is there. I mean, obviously, our bodies go into paralysis when we're sleeping. So imagine that we're in paralysis when we're sleeping, and our body triggers something that uh, gives us that sensation. So the question is it something manufactured in our minds, or are our minds showing us something that's there that we can't see until that part of our mind is triggered, right? You know what I mean? It opens up, like it's kind of like I don't know. Let's say you wine is wine. You got red wine, you got white wine, and whatever. But then after you've experienced a little bit more, and maybe you've gone to some classes, or you've talked or engaged in a wine tasting with somebody who really knows what they're doing, you can start to pick out notes and say, well, oh, this does have a nutty flavor to it, or whatever, right? And that's something that it was always there, but you never saw it. So suddenly you're cognizant of it. And so
Mm.
is the mind manufacturing it, or is the mind allowing you to see something that was
Um,
always there?
I mean, okay, well, two thoughts here. One, I literally took a bartending class in college, and
Okay.
we were taught that like when it came to wine tasting, that you could say this wine has flavors of whatever the fuck you want to, and people are just gonna agree with you because they want to sound like they're fancy.
Yeah.
But but the second more prevalent theory I've had for this is sleep paralysis demons in American culture, at least. It's because when sleep paralysis happens, you're kind of half awake, if that even.
Yeah.
You're kind of like just waking up.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're paralyzed in your bed, and you see something out the corner of your eye in your room. Most people explain it as, or ex, most paranormal scientists explain it as just your mind not being fully cognitive yet.
Yeah.
That's what they explain it as. Like your mind's not fully cognitive, and you're going to see things that are not really there. But I mean, it's not that your mind's in a state where you're going to see things that are there that you couldn't see before. I mean, maybe 2 out of 10 times is what it is.
Yeah.
But the other 8 out of 10 times, it's just your mind trying to wake the fuck up.
Yeah.
And you're gonna think I mean, you may still be in like a nightmare state almost,
Yeah.
where you see something in the corner of the room that looks demonic, or you see something that looks monsterish in the corner of the room. And I mean, I don't think these things are real. I never had sleep paralysis. I can't say I know what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to this. I'm just going by what normal people say about this.
Yeah.
But or what common people say about this. But
And
you see,
dreams are an interesting perception. So if
oh,
you're half in a dream state and you see something, we come up with all kinds of things in our minds.
I mean, I haven't had a dream in a good decade at least. Thank you,
Really?
marijuana. Thank you, marijuana. But I mean, I haven't had. I mean, okay, that's not true. I've had dreams, but they're not. I don't awake to these dreams. Once I'm awake, I'm awake. There's no
Yeah.
in between. When I'm asleep, I'm asleep. When I'm awake, I'm awake. There's no in between for me.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not saying it's true for everybody. There may be people that have these in between periods where they are half awake, half dreaming, and they think they see something sitting on their chest,
Yeah.
what have you. I mean, I am not here to doubt what anybody sees or says, but it's just the human mind is a tricky thing. That's the best way I can put it. The
It
human
is.
mind is a
It
tricky
is.
thing.
I mean, and that's part of the unknown, which fascinates me. Right? Is exploring when you're looking at paranormal phenomenon. The mind is another element that we don't know a lot about. So there's a lot of
Truly,
unknown involved there too.
truly, we know what 10%. We are able to use 10% of our brains, if that.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
exactly.
who knows if what we see half asleep, half dreaming is truly real?
Yeah,
Is it possible that these things are real? Oh, I don't doubt it for a fucking second. Don't get me wrong. I don't doubt it for a second. But that these things could be real. But am I going to go around saying these things are 100% real? No, no,
Yeah.
I can't. I would not be taken seriously in the paranormal community if I did. But until I experience it myself, I can't say I believe it one way or another. But
Yeah.
I will say there are a lot of things out there we don't know how to explain. We don't know what they are. And that's basically all I can say on it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Because
But it's all those things
as
we don't know about that I love writing about.
exactly. I mean, that's the reason I have this podcast as well, is we like talking about these things. We like the speculation, we like the hypothesis of these things.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I couldn't speculate about these things, I wouldn't be a paranormal podcaster because I would have no show.
Yeah.
But 100%, and you'd have no books. I mean, 100 fucking %. That's just the way life goes.
Yeah.
But I do want to get onto more of what we more at least of what you've seen, because you are an explorer of haunted locations. I'm dying to hear some tales of these haunted locations and what you've seen. The more terrifying, the better.
Well, to be quite honest, I have not experienced personally myself a lot of those. I go on a lot of ghost walks. I go on a lot of tours. Everywhere I travel, I do want to go on them in the hopes that I can experience something. I've only unfortunately had to experience most of it through the experts, right? So when I talk to ghost hunters and stuff like that. But so here's one that I couldn't explain that had happened to me, and it happened not too far here from Waterloo, Ontario, just a couple hours outside of town. I was meeting some paranormal investigators who had a podcast, but also did explorations of haunted locations. We met for dinner, and then we had an arrangement with this local old repertoire theater that was closed that day. I didn't have a show that night, and we went into the theater because it was allegedly haunted. They told me a couple stories about the theater, and they interviewed me in the theater. Now I travel with a 6 foot skeleton, plastic skeleton, Barnaby Bones. I have them with me when I'm at book events,
A
and
Barbie bones. I
for
fucking
a
love
couple
it.
of reasons, right? I mean, I have tons of skulls in my office and stuff like that. So I'm surrounded by stuff like that. I love it. But the skeleton is there when I'm at a bookstore or I'm doing an event, because if people see a guy with a skeleton, they're going to do one of two things most likely. If that's not their cup of tea, they're going to go, "Ooh, avoid the crazy bald man with the skeleton. Obviously, it's not my kind of book." If they are into the macabre, whether it's fiction or ghost stories or whatever, they're probably going to come over because they're interested because they see the guy with the skeleton in the book. So he's sort of a beacon for the right people to come chat with me. Anyway, so Barnaby was with me. I bring him to events like that. So I got Barnaby. I'm sitting on the stage. I put Barnaby in the audience because I want to get some pictures of him sitting in the theater, because I've never brought him into a theater before, and and so we were just setting up the equipment, and the one guy pulled out, EMC meters, EMF, sorry, meters, and was showing that there's some sort of activity in the room. I was like, okay, interesting. And then he pulls out his phone and he was looking at Barnaby because he was going to take a picture. And while we was looking through the viewfinder, we saw these blasts of light shooting up from the floor in front of Barnaby up towards the ceiling on a weird diagonal angle. And I'm thinking, this guy knows I'm a big chicken. He's trying to scare me. He's got some sort of app. You know how you can put virtual reality kind of overlay it on top of images. There's like a ghost app where you can have ghosts appear in the room and stuff like that. And it's like he's playing with an app, and he's just trying to scare me. So I pull out my phone and I do the same thing, and I point it at Barnaby, and this time I see the same sort of streaks of light. And the thing that I couldn't explain what it is, and I spent hours trying to research what sort of actual electrical energy, like, and I'm talking just standard physics or whatever, could impact the camera of his Android phone and my iPhone in such a way that it would cause these weird streaks. Now I understand, I know a lot of orbs and stuff like that. It'd just be dust particles and stuff that you would see in the air, and it's just water molecules, and you're just picking them up on the camera. I understand what those are, but this was like light, like weird spots of light that were shooting up diagonally, and I couldn't find in any scientific journals any indication of what would cause that specific phenomenon. And what bothers me is when I can't find, I don't know what it was. I'm not sure if it's an indication that there were spirits there, but it's just one of the ones, and so I'm fascinated, and I'm always interested, when I see articles pop up or whatever on how this affects like a digital camera. So again, that those kinds of stories always intrigue me.
I mean, I can see why. And who knows if the skeleton you carry around? I mean, I'm assuming the skeleton you carry around is not a real skeleton. I'm assuming it was bought at
No,
the
no,
pop
it's
store.
plastic. It's a plastic skeleton.
Okay,
Costco. Um,
I mean, but who knows if it actually had some kind of spirit that wanted to, you know, attach to it. Who knows?
you never
Who
know.
knows?
Yeah, yeah, you never
There's
know.
there's a lot of things that are possible in this world, and I'm not going to question them
Yeah,
because it's just the way it goes.
yeah,
But I that's the biggest thing about this show is 200 plus episodes, and I can still say to this day, I don't fucking know.
yeah,
Like, there's a lot of things I can't explain in this fucking world,
yeah,
and that's why I love this show because there
yeah.
are a
Of
lot of
course.
things in this world
Yeah,
that I cannot explain. But I mean, not much more I can say than that. Really, there isn't, and that's kind of creepy. That story you just told is kind of creepy, which
yeah.
is another reason I love this show is I love the creepy shit.
Well, I've
Creepy
got
shit.
another one for you. I've got one that
Oh,
actually happened to me. Well, that happened to me, but this is one that happened. So when the book Haunted Hospitals came out, that book came out several years ago. My partner and I were headed down. I was going to a writers' conference in Orlando, and she has the summer off. So we drove down to the conference, and we stopped in actually at a bunch of haunted bars and breweries along the way because we like craft beer, and I'm always interested in ghosts. So that was great for some research. On the way back, we looked at it and thought, okay, from Orlando to get back to Ontario, Canada, it's like 20 some hours driving. We did it in 4 days going down. We thought, well, let's do it in like two. And we looked at it, and we looked at Weston, West Virginia was a 14-hour drive or something like
yep,
that from Orlando. And
yep,
in Weston, West Virginia was the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which
yep.
my co-author Rhonda wrote about. So when I co-author a book, we split it in half and say, okay, I'll write this, you write that, and we have a like a Google spreadsheet, and we divide it up. So she would decide, okay, I'm going to do some research on this, you do research on that, or I live near here, I can go visit this place and talk to these people. So anyways, it was one of those stories I wasn't as familiar with. I'd only proofread it for her, so I didn't do all the research. So we said on the way back, why don't we stop, because they do tours, like haunted tours of this old building. That would be great. I can have the book, I can get some pictures of myself in front of the asylum. So that's just to explain, like, I was really excited to get there, pretty thrilled that we could go on a morning ghost walk. So we're driving, and we get up to Weston, and we're in the town, so we know we're pretty close to where the asylum is. Let's get a hotel. It's 1 a.m. We're exhausted, and I run into the first hotel. She pulls up, and the parking lot is full. I run in and say, "Do you have any rooms?" And like, "No, we're completely booked up for the night. Like, just nothing left." She goes, "There's another hotel in the condo lodge just about an hour or a mile or so down the road." So we're driving through the foggy mountains. We finally get to the next place. Parking lot is pretty full. I go in and ask if they have a room, and the clerk says, "We only have one room left, and we don't have like a king or a queen. It's just two double beds." And I said, "I don't care. We're just going to sleep. We just need a place to go to sleep for a few hours so we can go on this tour in the morning." So we check into the hotel. Liz takes the bed near the bathroom. I take the bed near the door, put our stuff in the room. she puts a hoodie on, puts it over her head, rolls over, and she's out she falls asleep like that. It takes me an hour to fall asleep, and I'm excited. I'm pretty nervous that we're going on a little ghost expedition the next day, etc. And I finally fall asleep, and in the middle of the night, I wake up and I hear Liz moving around, and I look up and I see her going around the side of her bed towards the bathroom. And as I'm laying there, I'm looking at where she walked around to the bathroom, and I'm waiting for the bathroom light to come on, and it doesn't come on. And I think, well, that's weird, but she can't see anything. And so what happens is I then hear her like making snory type breathing noises in the bed beside me. And I sat up and went, "Oh my God, there's a woman in our room." And I freaked out. I grabbed my phone. I put the light of the phone on. I, lit up the room, kind of checked the door latch is still locked. And I was thinking, "Oh my God, there's a woman in the room." And then I finally told myself, "Here's what happened. Mark, you idiot." I was laying in bed. Liz got up, went to the washroom. She walked to the bathroom. I fell asleep. She comes out of the bathroom 5 minutes later. I wake up 5 minutes later, and I think 2 seconds have passed. And that's what happened. "Mark, you're being paranoid. Go back to bed." Fine. I finally convinced myself nothing happened. There was not a woman in the room. Go to bed. And then about an hour or two later, I hear this sort of clunking on where we kept my laptop and our passports, because we're in the US from Canada. And I was like,
Yep.
"Oh my God, there's someone in the room. They're going through my things." And I sat up again, and I couldn't see anyone. I had to, put the flashlight from my phone on. No one's in the room. The door's latched. And I was like, "Mark, you're so paranoid." Finally tossed and turned, finally went back to bed. I'm not going to wake up Liz, because I've woken her up thinking Bigfoot was outside the tent. I'm not doing that again. So anyways, in the morning we get up, and I asked her, we're getting ready, and I said, "Hey, did you get up at all last night?" And she goes, "No, I put that hoodie over my head, and I never left the bed all night. I was out." And I said, "Well, that's funny, because here's what I thought happened last night. You sure you didn't go to the bathroom?" No. So I told her the whole story. And when I finished telling the story, her face got really white. And she said, "Well, I wasn't going to say anything because I thought it was a dream." But when she was laying in bed with the hoodie over her head, she was laying in bed, and she thought she felt someone standing over her. And then she felt a hand touch her shoulder. And it wasn't my
Ooh.
hand. She said it felt like a woman's hand touching her shoulder. She was convinced there was a woman in the room. And what she did is she ended up stealing herself up, because she's pretty feisty, to swing around and take a jab at whoever was in the room, and there was nobody there. And so that is the experience. I thought I saw and heard somebody. She thought she felt somebody in the room, and we both thought that there was a woman in the room. I did research. I couldn't find any other ghost stories from this hotel. I checked with the staff as well to see if anyone had reported anything strange happening. But again, it's one of those ones where I was like, I can't explain why I thought there was a woman there, and so did she.
That is creepy. That is creepy. I'm not gonna lie. And I mean, I'm kind of curious about the whole Bigfoot in a tent thing, but
Oh, it was not. It was just another camper. But she went out
uh,
to check, because she's the brave one.
well, I mean that right there is creepy as hell. I mean, a haunting in a hotel, you gotta fucking love it. You gotta fucking
Yeah,
love it. And who knows? Who knows what could have happened in that hotel? Who knows who could have died in that hotel, or
yeah,
had, or who stayed in that hotel enough to have a presence there still? Because see, hotels are tricky. They're not like houses.
yeah,
Like people don't usually leave their presence, because it's said that people who pass on in a house can leave, like, their footprint. They can leave their spiritual
yeah,
footprint in a house because they were there so long that part of them is still there.
yeah,
Whether it's an actual presence or not can be debated.
yeah,
But in a hotel, that's a whole nother story, because most people only stay in a hotel for one night, if that.
yeah. But thousands
So
of people have stayed there.
I know exactly. Thousands upon thousands of people stay there, especially in West Virginia. I mean,
Yes.
that's a big tourist area, so who the fuck knows? I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? It's tricky. It's really tricky. But well, I do want to thank you for coming on, Mark. It's been an incredible show. We heard some great experiences on here, and you said you didn't really have any experiences, but you did. You did.
Well, I had a
So,
few, but I'm saying as a child, I never had experiences that led me to want to write about
well, I mean, yeah, I get that. I get that. But
it.
tell my audience where they can find you, where they can find your books,
Yeah.
and please promote yourself to the
Yeah, I
public.
mean, you can go to markleslie.ca, or if you go to any online bookstore, Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of them, you can search Mark Leslie. And I've got 6 books, paranormal books. I've got about 35 books in total, horror
Jesus,
collections and urban fantasy, all kinds of stuff. So you can find me
dude,
almost anywhere.
you barely look like you're 35 years old and you have 35 books. Holy shit.
Clean
Well,
living.
folks, yeah, exactly. But folks, go check out Mark Leslie. My God, I am gonna be checking out some of his shit because okay, if I get the time to read someday, I will check out his shit. I got a third kid in the way, so
Yeah,
my time to read is nowhere near anytime soon. I
yeah,
have I have the whole series of books I showed you, Sussex County Hauntings by Eleanor Wagner. I haven't even turned a page in it yet because I
yeah.
don't have time to read. I haven't had time to read in the last 2 3 years at least.
Well,
So
kids will do that to you. Yeah,
yeah, bottom line. But so please, folks, go check out Mark Leslie. You all know where you can find me. If you don't, shame, just shame. But if you don't, check out the outro. It's all there. I'm not gonna say it again because I'm lazy and y'all don't listen. But for all my watchers, check out the bottom of the screen. It's everywhere you can find me. And for all my listeners, check out the outro, please. But I do want to thank Mark for coming on because it's been an incredible episode. And I would honestly keep it going longer if I wasn't as dead tired as I am. So, and I gotta go back to work tomorrow because holiday weekends. I gotta go back to work tomorrow. So it is what it is. But I do thank Mark for coming on because it's been an amazing show. And until next time, listeners and watchers, you all have a good night and hope you had a good Memorial Day weekend for Americans at least. Until then, until Wednesday.